Hey, my name is Travis Kassab, and the title of this is The Startup Advice I Cannot Forget. There is no formula for going from 0 to 1. It cannot be prescribed. However, there are places and people where lightning has struck more than once. I've looked into advice coming from Silicon Valley, and Mr. Paul Graham's is the only advice I haven't been able to forget. I'll link the source of what I'm talking about in the description below, and I hope you check it out. It is a beautiful piece written by Paul Graham himself. It's the opposite of BuzzFeed and mainstream journalism because it is nuanced and intellectually honest. Although it's the type of advice that is frustrating to hear because it leaves so much to be desired. This makes me respect it all the more. The advice comes from one of the most qualified to give it. Paul succeeded as a tech entrepreneur in the 90s and founded the renowned Y Combinator, where it was his job to predict successful seed stage startups. Airbnb, Stripe, Dropbox, and Twitch are just several billion-dollar companies to have resulted. So here it is. This is the startup advice I cannot seem to forget. Paul starts off by saying, become the kind of person to have good startup ideas. And one way you might do this is to get to the leading edge of a field, either as a user or as a contributor in that field. This is what he calls living in the future. By definition, the present has everything it couldn't live without because here we all are. However, there are still many things that are missing in the future, so to put it all together, live in the future and build what is missing. He gives the example of getting to the leading edge in programming, which apparently at the time for him in 2012 when he wrote this was mobile apps. Here are several ideas that pop into my head while making this video. Decentralized autonomous organizations. This is the future of internet communities. Large language models, or AI. This is the future of user interfaces. NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. This is the future of digital property and ownership. And DNA, the future of medicine. His next piece of advice is to notice and not think. When people try to think up ideas, they often come up with only plausible sounding ideas, all of which aren't really needed in reality. When you're going about your life in the future, the things that are missing will naturally perturb you. So you notice startup ideas rather than think of them. And even better if you say to yourself, I wish someone else would build this for me, or I would definitely pay for this if it existed. Next. And this leads into the next piece of advice. You can be more sure that you are on the right track when you yourself are a target user. This way you can confirm for yourself that you're solving a real problem and not just making one up. So adding everything together so far, we have live in the future, and notice and build what is missing for you. And an extra bonus on top of being a target user is to build the product yourself. This overlaps with Sam Altman's advice, who is the CEO of OpenAI. For non-technical founders, his advice is to learn to hack. If you get to the point where you can build at least a version 1, now you can have ideas and execute on them in the same day. How many good ideas do you think have died because the person who had the idea didn't know the next step to take? So this is really about speeding up and unblocking the product development cycle. When you're a target user and a hacker, this loop can happen inside of a single mind, the idea, build, and evaluate loop. The final piece of advice is something I have a lot of experience with from product design and something I wholeheartedly agree with. Paul says that all good startups started by targeting a specific group of users who needed something really badly. And this overlaps with what Steve Blank calls early evangelists or early evangelists. On almost every product I've ever worked on, the user and thus the product requirements have been vague, and I think this is because there's a tendency to want to solve the problems of many people rather than start by solving the problems of few people. No one gets excited when you solve a problem for 10 people, even if they love you for it, but I think we can all agree this is a better starting point than trying to solve a problem for 1 million people, none of whom end up using the product at all. So this makes me think of the Carl Jung quote, Modern man can't see God because he doesn't look low enough. Except in our case, it would be the team never finds product market fit because it doesn't start small enough. In conclusion, I hope to eventually forget all of this advice. Maybe then I'll be able to notice and not think. Maybe then I'll be the kind of person to have good startup ideas. Thank you.